I'm waiting only for one person, so I'm going to go ahead and continue. I see you now, Jessica. Thank you so much. Now I've heard from everybody, so we will get started. And thank you all for being here. Okay. So we're talking about negotiation, right? Who hates to talk about money? Everybody hates to talk about money, don't they? And that's what negotiation ends up being, about the money. But we're going to get rid of the word negotiation, and we're going to replace it. Replace the word negotiation with collaboration. Collaboration will be the most effective way for you to work with workers and to work with others in trying to accomplish what it is that you want to accomplish. We all hate talking about money, and oftentimes what we find ourselves having to do is talk about money. It is not the most fun thing to do. As humans, we are wired to not want to do that. All of you who are foster, adoptive, and kinship families, you are serving as volunteers. And as a volunteer, it's not like having a paying job because the payroll is not automatic. The payroll is all dependent oftentimes on what the needs of the children are. The only thing automatic about providing foster care is the basic maintenance rate. Everything else has to be collaborated to be able to be accomplished. And this system is continually built on reducing cost. And anytime you see there's any reform in child welfare, you see there is an effort to try to explain to everyone that it's so important because it will reduce costs. It's always what you hear when you hear anything about reform. We have to learn a new way to talk about money at the child level, so we're going to be doing that today. We're going to be talking about how collaboration can be a more comfortable approach for families and for workers. So that's what we'll be doing today. We're going to learn strategies, tips, and ideas for getting more for children. That's at the heart of this webinar. We're going to provide you with the strategies, tips, and ideas, and if they can become a part of your core communication styles, it will make sitting at the table with your workers a lot more comfortable. One of the key words to keep in mind in this webinar, and as you proceed to use the ideas and the strategies and the tips that you get from this webinar, keep in mind the word empathy. To successfully acquire what children need from a system that is designed to protect public funding, those individuals you are meeting with are doing their job for what they receive a paycheck for. They have rules and regulations they have to follow. They have budgets they have to meet. And it is important for all of us to understand that and to have empathy for them in their relationship with the system in order to help build a good collaborative approach for the children. Keep reminding yourself, as painful as it is sometimes, in collaborating and negotiating, that it's for the children. There are the first 6 things that it's important to keep in mind when you're going to turn negotiation into collaboration. And it requires a lot of preparation, all of which is emotional, intellectual, and physical. Be sure to not let your emotions rule. Be sure that you are collecting your thoughts before you step into that room. Be very prepared. Get your anger, your frustrations, and your other emotions in check before you even enter the building. Know what those issues are that you want to address. Once you're in the room, try to identify who is really the decision maker. There may be a lot of people talking, but one person in that room is really the yes or no person, the final arbiter. You want to identify who that person is. You want to be able to make sure that you address that person, make sure that they understand what you are trying to say. You want everyone to understand, but you really want that person to come onto your side for the sake of the children. Focus on your overall goal. Don't focus on what is right or wrong or what happened in the past. Focus on what you need to accomplish. But what you need to accomplish is to make sure that the children are getting what they need. Make a personal contact with everyone in the room. Make sure that when you are introducing yourself, that you stand up. That when people are coming in the room, that you're standing there, you're shaking their hand, you're making eye contact, you're saying their name when you're speaking to them. Acknowledge everyone in the room, even the people taking notes. Be remembered for the fact that you were friendly and respectful and empathetic to everyone in the room. Acknowledge the power in the room by respecting and valuing the positions and the people who are holding the keys that guard what you want for those children that you are caring for. Be sure to thank everyone for agreeing to meet, or if they called the meeting, thank them for inviting you. It's very simple. It's as though we were raised with the golden rule: treat people the way we want to be treated. That's exactly what you have to do when you're working on collaborating on behalf of children. The whole process for you will become a lot less stressful when you're going to ask for things if you think of it as a conversation, as though you're trying to develop a support network for the children in your care. Humans have an innate desire to be liked and valued. Don't come in with the problem solved. Come in looking for their help in solving the problem. People want to help. People who go into social work, who go into this line of work, at the very core of their being, want to be helpful. If you come in already with the answers, they don't have a chance to be helpful. They don't feel as good. So it's important that everybody has a chance to come up with solutions. One of the things that I learned very early on from my grandmother is there is no greater gift that you give another person than to need them. People want to feel that other people need them. And then when you give a person a chance to help you, you are actually giving them a gift. Just when we talk about the fact that we're helping children by being foster, adoptive, and kinship families, they're also helping us to feel good about ourselves and to feel like we're making a difference in the world. And that's a big gift. Talk with the people in that room. Don't talk at them. It's a little different because when you're in a webinar, you're talking at people, and it's very difficult to do this. And I like having a conversation better, but that's not the format for a webinar. Begin with a mutual understanding of what everyone wants: a better life and a productive livelihood for the children as they grow into community members. At the bottom line, no matter what all of our individual jobs are, we wouldn't be doing this work if that wasn't the core value that we had, that we want the children, no matter who we are and what role we play in the service planning team, we want the children to have a better life. Acknowledge that you need the help of everyone in the room to help the child in your care accomplish the aspirations everyone has for him or her. And please realize that if you're a know-it-all, this will turn the conversation into a debate. So it's important that when you come into the room, it is, here are the issues or the challenges that we are facing, and here's what we need help with. And don't come in saying, I need respite from this provider, and I need childcare from this provider, and I need to take the child to this therapist for this type of therapy. Instead, come in with what you know to be the issue, what you are facing with the child in your home, and ask for assistance. Helping turn all of the planning process into a conversation will help everyone feel more productive throughout the meeting. There are basically 3 ingredients in accomplishing what you want to accomplish through a negotiation or a collaborative process. A lot of people think that it's the substance of the meeting that is the big part of how you get what you want, but it's not. In all of the research, and especially in the research from Stuart Diamond, who is with the Wharton School of Business, it shows that about 55% of accomplishing what you want comes from building relationships with people, from having the conversation, from making sure that people that are in the room with you have empathy for you and you for them, and that you are all wanting to help each other. So building that conversation, building that relationship in every aspect in business or in child welfare has to do with your relationship with people. Only about 38% or so of the process of achieving what you want through the negotiation or collaborative process will actually come from the process itself, where everybody is following the rules and the procedures. That's only about 38% of actually getting what you want. Following what the rules are about the budget and how the money can be spent here or how the money can be spent there. And then the substance, what you end up really needing for the child is only about 8% of what actually has to be provided in that meeting to be able to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. Perception becomes reality. I'm sure many of you have recognized this, that it's all based upon your individual history of how you will interpret what you see. If somebody gives you a piece of paper and draws a square and puts a red dot in the top corner, and most of a piece of paper is all white, there's an outline of a box, and then there's a little red dot, and you ask people to tell you the one thing that they see, everyone is basically going to tell you something different. Some people are going to tell you they see a piece of paper. Some people are going to tell you they see a red dot. Some people are going to tell you they see an empty box with only a little red dot in it. All of it is based upon individuals' perception, what has happened in their history, how they see the world. And so it's important that you make sure that, since everyone's perception is different, that all of the facts are very, very clear, so that everybody starts in the room with the same understanding. Everyone needs to begin with believing that what they see as the facts are invisible to everyone else in the room, because they see their own facts. You can come into the room and say, I see a child who, let's just say that you see a child with a temper tantrum. One person in the room is going to say, well, I see a child who has abuse history and has a problems regulating their behavior. Someone else is going to say, I see a child that nobody has set limits for them. Someone else is going to say, I see a child who is throwing a temper tantrum, and didn't get what they wanted. So everybody perceives the problem differently. So if you can explain your facts as you see them and what you see with the child your way, and then ask others in the room, what do they see are the facts? It will help to get everybody on the same page. Sometimes you have to explain in writing what you need. One of the things that is important is to realize that when you come into the planning meeting for children in care, the first thing that you are doing is realizing you are not there to ask for money. The money is a means for getting what is needed, but it's not actually what you need. What you actually need are supports and services. And so you need to come forward at the meeting and talk about, here's what's happening in the home, and here are the things that I need help with. And then let the people in the room help you, and by pointing out different things they might be able to provide to help you resolve that conflict or meet that challenge or to continue that success. So that it's not about money, it's about what do we need. Money is not what we actually want, it's what money can buy that we want. And if money didn't buy things, we really wouldn't need it, right? So keep the conversation around the issue of what is needed and not the money. So let's say that you're in the meeting and you have some issues that you want to bring up to everyone. One of the things you want to do is discuss what the child needs. And so many things that you might think that you want for the child that you would need money for, you might usually go in and say, well, I need money for this and money for this and money for this and money for this. But if instead you turn that conversation to, I'm running out of patience and this child really needs me to be fully engaged, and I'm worn out, I don't have any more strength. Well, then somebody might say, well, then let's get you some respite. And if somebody says, I think the child really needs to develop some more friends. Well, instead of you asking for money for a Y membership, if you're focusing on the child needs more friends, maybe everyone there can think of ways in which they can help with something like maybe a Y membership or some other sort of, soccer team or something else, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, whatever they all come up with. If you think that the issue is that the child needs better grades, and while you may want money for tutoring, if you tell them that the issue is you need the child's grades to improve, that gives the team a chance to talk about tutoring. The same way as we go on down the list with safety and improved behavior, personal hygiene, all of these are things that you need for the child, and you don't have to ask for money. You can say, these are the things I need, and let the team try to help you figure out what is the best way to get those things. Money. The wrong 5-letter word for negotiating or collaborating in child welfare. It is the means to get what you want, but it is not really what you want. It is one of the means to get what you want, but it's not really what you're asking for. Child. That's the right 5-letter word for negotiating or collaborating in child welfare. It is about what the child needs to be successful. Money is the means to buy what the child needs, and there are many different avenues in which you can create that. So if you're putting these tips into practice, some of the ways that you put these tips into practice, it's very advisable that before you go into that meeting, you write down some of these tips on a note card. And the reason is not necessarily that you're going to read those tips while you're in the meeting, but as humans, we retain more information by repetition and by using different formats for seeing or hearing the same information. So if you're writing it down, your brain is helping you to remember it without you even necessarily having to even look at the note cards. You have them there as a trigger to remind you, but you might not ever read them. And so, for example, we take notes in meetings. And oftentimes, after the meeting's over, we never look at the notes unless we have to go back and show some documentation or reference something. It is the act of taking the notes that actually helps us retain information. If you've ever noticed when you were in college, you took notes, you were like going crazy taking notes. But yet, oftentimes, we didn't go back and look at the notes. But taking that note helped our brain to trigger a memory response. And some of the tips that you need to write on that note card, as you can see here, that you must communicate clearly and not assume others know what you know or you feel. And that you must listen. And active listeners, if you're actually involved in active communication, active listening, you will ask clarifying questions. If you're listening and somebody says, well, I had Tommy the other day and he was very concerned about visiting with his birth mother, and I thought that perhaps we ought to be doing something about that. Well, if you're actively listening, you say, oh, well, so you think that maybe there's something more we need to be doing. Do you have any ideas about what we can be doing at home around the birth mother visits that might be helpful? And that shows that you are listening to that person. It makes them feel valued, and it will help them to help you frame some responses to the visit with the birth parents, for example. Write down, I must value everyone in the room and the role that they must play. I cannot blame them. If somebody has to tell you no to something, if they are truly collaborating with you and you have created a conversation and you've developed relationships, it's probably as painful for them to tell you no as it is for you to hear it. So try to have the empathy that you need in the process, and maybe the answer will be no at this meeting. But maybe as you build that relationship, they start trying to figure out a way to get to yes. And that could come later on. So just remember that what you do in one meeting can fall over into other meetings and other thought processes that might give you more of what you want later on. Summarize what I am hearing several times in the meetings to make sure that we have a common understanding. Somebody says to you, I think that the individualized educational plan for Sally is not quite where we need it to be, and I think we need to add some occupational therapy. Then you might want to say, okay, I just want to summarize what I think I'm hearing you say about the IEP process. Are you saying that I should go to the IEP process planning meeting and ask for the occupational therapy, or are you suggesting that you will be going and asking for the occupational therapy? That shows active listening, and it helps you develop a common understanding of what's going to happen. Avoid debating, and don't show anger or frustration. I think those are pretty self-explanatory. When you have called the meeting, if you've actually asked for the meeting, then be prepared to start the meeting. Introduce yourself briefly, ask others to introduce themselves, and thank everyone for being there. Be a responsible host. Be standing up when people come into the room. Say their name when they tell you their name. Say, "Oh, it's so nice to meet you, Sarah." Shake hands. Acknowledge something that they might have done. Peter was very excited to have that visit with his grandmother. Thanks for arranging that, Peter, or Tom, or whoever that might have been. And stay child-focused. Don't refer to what you need from them. Focus on what the child needs from the team. Refer to yourself as a team member. Make yourself a team member in your own words as well, so that they can see that you have owned this process with them. Ask for input of everyone in the room about what they would like to see happen for the child. People want to know their opinions and their insights are valued. Explain the reason for the meeting. One of the processes we will talk about today is the idea of reverse planning or path planning. And what happens in this kind of planning, and we'll talk about this, like I said, later, we want to start with a child-centered conversation. Making sure that you say things about, "I am so hopeful for Tim's future. He's telling us now he really wants to study engineering. And you know he has great math skills when he can concentrate. Wouldn't it be great if we could all find a way to help him? Would love to get some ideas from everyone." So you're engaging them, you're creating conversation, and you're starting with what might be a common goal for everyone in the room. Again, we'll talk about that later. Ask everyone to help you by telling what their hopes are for the child. That gets everybody engaged in the conversation and the process. Some of you, for example, you could say, "So many of you have known Tim for longer than I have. I would love to know what dreams you have for him, either in the short term or in the long term. What kind of things you would like to see accomplished while he's in my care." Engaging people in the conversation, bringing them in, making them feel like you value them. I cannot express enough how important that is in a collaborative negotiation process. So as I said, talking about setting goals, the goals that are set for a child help to identify the resources the child will need. The type of planning that we're going to talk about here very briefly is called path planning, and we can certainly have some more conversations about this at the end. But the path conversation allows you to identify the end goal in order to identify what your means are for getting there. It helps you develop a common ground, which is child-centered and puts everyone on the same path. If, for example, if we start with the big picture in planning, then we can lay out all the steps we need to get there. If we start with the steps that we need to take, we might not get to our destination. So again, and I know I keep reiterating this, it's not all about money. It is important that your conversation is focused on the child's needs. Child-specific services. Here's some more examples. Transportation support, respite, support networks, family activities. These are the kinds of things that after you have identified goals, you will be able to then say, it would help to have this service or that service in able to accomplish that goal. Again, the path model has us start working backwards. And it's working backwards, just like if you're doing a map. You start with where you want to go and you route yourself to that. That's all that path planning is. I'm going to pause for a second, take a quick poll before we get into all the specifics of the path model. And I'm going to put this poll out there for you real quickly. Okay. All right. Closing the poll. Thank you, everyone. And let me go on to the path model. I'm going to show you some slides about reverse planning. And I have not automated this slide. I haven't done any kind of zooming different things in and out for you. So you're going to see the whole path process laid out without seeing how it starts and moves forward, but I will walk you through that. So we're going to start with the young man who's 16 years old and wants to be an engineer. Focusing on a goal of this magnitude, as I said, is generally best path planning for an older child. So you're talking about a child who's probably 13, 14, 16, 17, and you're thinking about what's going to happen in their career, what's going to happen in their schooling. Because if you think about what that goal is that you have, then you might be able to actually work with the team to decide what kind of services need to be in place. So there are 5 life domains that we use in the path planning model: physical and mental health, spirituality and values, family and friends, work or meaningful activity, and education. We have to consider these life domains when planning a path to an outcome that we desire. And then these are just examples of things you might have to think about. So if you say to the team, so he wants to be an engineer, and I want to do everything in my power in my home to try to make sure that he's able to accomplish that goal. And I really need some guidance and some help because there are some things that are probably going to be stumbling blocks for him, and we need to figure out how to address those stumbling blocks so that he has a straight path to what he's trying to accomplish. And sometimes that means you have to also work with a child to talk about some things that are like engineering, because perhaps it's a child who maybe the grades aren't going to be good enough to get into engineering school, so they need to start first at a junior college or a trade school first and then build up their process into engineering. So let's just say that everybody agrees, yeah, that'd be great if Tim could be an engineer. Well, Tim has some issues with concentration. So we need to look at what are the medications, what are the counseling things that we need to be able to establish to make sure that he can focus and that he can keep his concentration up. And then we talk about spirituality and values. One of the things is perhaps with his inability to focus, he might also find it difficult to be able to come up with a real work plan, and maybe doesn't have a set of values about how important it is to be someplace on time, to do something that they have said they're going to do. So in this kind of a situation, the team might say, hey, let's try to find a mentor that can help him develop some core set of values, somebody in the engineering field, or maybe we know somebody at Big Brother, Big Sister who might be able to help mentor him into how important it is to keep your word on things and to make sure you show up on time for your appointments and things like that. Perhaps if Tim is having a problem with concentration, he might also be having some issues around socializing with family and friends that might get in the way of him being successful. So assessing his skills and his abilities in socialization and finding out little triggers that might help to identify different kind of services that might be available for him, or what kind of supports. Maybe he needs a YMCA membership so he has a chance to be around other people, to really have a chance to explore how to be with people since he's going to be going off to school. Then work or meaningful activity. If he wants to be an engineer, then maybe the team says, well, he wants to be an engineer. Why don't we try to find some volunteer work or some part-time work that is in that area that he might have a chance to at least use some of the skills he would need to be an engineer, math or drafting or computer skills. And then again, if in education field, if he's having some issues around attention, then perhaps there's some need for some tutoring as well. If he hasn't been paying close attention, he might be falling behind in some of his other classes, and you need to get the grades up in order for him to get into college. So that was an example of how you can use the path approach to outlining what kind of services somebody needs. Now let's say we have a younger child. Say we have a child who's 6 years old and Sally needs to learn to control her anger. Focusing on a goal of this magnitude is generally best for path planning. Oh, that's supposed to say for younger children, so sorry everyone, I'll have to correct that on my slide. So let's say that Sally has the goal for everybody in the room as you talk about, well, she really gets angry over this, or she really gets angry over this, and then she breaks a window, or then she hits somebody. So everybody's focused on the things that are happening with her. So then bringing people together and saying, okay, so what do we want for her? Well, we want her to have positive interactions with people and with animals. We don't want her to kick the dog. We don't want her to get angry at people and throw things. So we want to create positive interactions with people and animals. So we use the 5 life domains to say, all right, in these 5 life domains, what could we be doing to start addressing that need for positive interaction? And you'll see here, there's some different things. Maybe a physical assessment to make sure that doesn't have some sort of a brain trauma, doesn't have some lesion in her brain that is causing her to have aggressive episodes. A behavioral assessment. What is it that are her triggers? And how do we address those triggers? Finding a mentor that can help her develop a set of values about the importance of treating people with kindness and ways in which you can use your anger in ways to understand yourself better and develop better relationships by learning how to quash, if you will, the anger. Coming up with social memberships. Maybe if she's having bad interactions with people, she needs to develop a stronger social network. So in this case, if under family and friends, people might say, well, I think she needs to socialize some more. Okay, so what are some ways we can socialize her more? Where are some places we can go? Do you have a faith-based community that you go to? Could she join the youth group or the children's group? Maybe there's a Y membership that would be available to her. So different ways of looking at the social membership area under family and friends. Making sure that she understands that she's responsible for damage to the house, giving her chores around the house when she's been angry, not necessarily chores that are the chores to fix what she's broken. If she's broken a plate glass window, picking up the glass is probably not a good idea. But maybe cleaning the window after it gets replaced might be something that she could do. So having those kind of conversations with people in the room about how do we use the area of work or meaningful activity to drive her to positive interactions with people and animals. And then under education, are there some adjustments we need to make in our IEP that might help to affect getting a better positive interaction with people? So that's the PATH model. And again, it takes about 2 or 3 hours to actually show the PATH model. And it's usually done with a large sheet of paper on the wall and the group of people and everyone. You put up a goal for the child at the very beginning that everybody agrees that this is what we would like to see accomplished. And then there are many different routes using those 5 life domains for getting there. And people go up to the paper and they write down, in this life domain, here's what I think I could do, or here's what I think I could arrange, or here's what I think we need. Does anybody have this? So that's one of the ways in which you do the path planning. You can do it with sticky notes. You can do it with writing on the large pieces of paper. But it's proven quite successful in many different venues, including in areas where people are dealing with class action lawsuits and they're trying to get people back in the community from being in developmental centers. People have used this approach to setting up consumer-centered or child-centered planning that makes sure that we have a community of people working toward the actual goal that we have for the life of that child. So again, it's important in negotiating, which we now call collaboration, to focus on the big picture. So the big picture is we need help finding a solution to some anger issues. That'll allow for some problem solving and team decision making, which looks for possibilities and out of the box thinking. If you focus on the little picture issues like the temper tantrum that was thrown last night, you're going to limit the team. They're going to stay in a box, and there's not going to be a process that they're going to be able to engage in to actually let them look at the big picture, the root cause, what you actually want at the end of the day for the child. So we don't want to get mired down in one or two things that went wrong. We want to focus on what are the things that need to be accomplished and what is the pathway to getting there. So one of the other important things to do is to remember that yesterday is gone. You can't unsay what you said, you can't undo what you did, and neither can anyone else in that room. So you need to make today the day of repairing any relationships that might have gone awry, or building a path for better communications for the future. Remember that yesterday is gone. When we go into a process of trying to fix what happened yesterday, that's called litigation. When we are trying to instead focus on what's next, that's negotiation and collaboration. So as you go forward as a team, think about what you need to do differently and how you can be the most help to the team and to be considered a part of the team. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. If you do need a training certificate, please send an email to, oops, did I not do, I did do that. Okay. Sorry, I find myself talking to myself during these webinars. Please send an email to cnewbanks@fovf.org, and I will send out a certificate. Remember that we archive all of our webinar Wednesdays. They're all on our training tab at facesofvirginia.org. And I'm now going to send you a poll. I hope that you will share our information with other people. I'm going to send you a quick poll. Thanks, everybody. That was really nice comments. I'm also now going to look at what questions anybody might have. If I skimmed over things too fast, or if there's something you want to discuss, please just type up your question and send it here, and I will read out your question out loud to everybody and try to provide an answer. If you have any questions, you can send them to me now. I feel like I should have some background music playing for you. Da da dun da da dun da dun da da. Okay. Oh, alrighty. So the question is, what about if the situation changes after adoption? So if I'm to understand your question, then the question is, you've negotiated everything and the adoption has gone through, and now you're faced with, there needs to be a change, and you've already negotiated your adoption assistance agreement. Well, it's the same process that you would want to use, and we've had a webinar about how to negotiate a change in your adoption assistance agreement. But you simply ask your worker, you send a letter to your worker. It's always best to do that in writing or through an email. If you do a letter, do it certified, or do an email and keep a copy of it, and follow up with the worker to make sure that they got your email, and ask for a review of your adoption assistance agreement. If you're going to get an adoption assistance review to change what you have agreed to in your contract, these same techniques work. You have to sit down with people and talk about what is it that you need at the end of the day. It's always best not to say what I need is money. Instead, say what I need are some additional services, or I need people to help me figure out a solution to this issue that I am faced with. What do you think we could do? And sometimes what they might find is if you have a child whose behaviors or the medical condition are getting more intense, they may say, well, what we can do is do a VMAT to increase your funding. And you can ask them, well, if you increase my funding, what kind of things do you think would be helpful? in addressing the issues, making sure that they understand that you're really looking for their knowledge and their support is very, very important. And I hope that that sort of answers the question. So somebody can, the person I'm talking to can let me know if that addressed the question. So I have another question here, that the overall presentation was wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear that. And my question, I would like more information regarding the PATH model for further reading. I'm going to be sending out a newsletter, and I'm assuming that you got notice about this webinar from our newsletters because you're a member or someone forwarded it to you. I'm going to send out some information about this negotiation process and the PATH model in that newsletter, to help people get some more information about it with some links. So be looking for that probably in the next week or two. Any other questions? Okay, again, I want to make sure you all know that you can, if you joined us late, or if you want to hear this again, or you know somebody else who might benefit from this webinar, please go to our website, click on the training tab, and there at the very top you will see the Webinar Wednesdays archive, and you can look at all of the, I think the last 6 webinars that we've had. And this should be up there in the next couple of days. And again, send me a request for a training certificate if you need that for your agency. And for those family members who are on the line, don't forget, tonight is our online posting on Facebook. If you're a friend of Faces and want to be on our support chat that we have every Wednesday at 9 o'clock, all you have to do is send us a request and we will add you to the support group. So thank you very much, everyone. I don't see any other questions. I hope that you've enjoyed yourself, and I hope you have a nice evening. Thank you. Thanks, Christy.